Good morning, sir. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, thank you very much.
Can I check that Mr. Ward can see and hear us?
I can, yes.
Thank you very much. May I recall Graham Ward? He needs to be re-sworn, please.
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Ward. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
I'm the usher that's going to swear you in now. Do you have a Bible with you?
I do, yes.
Okay, if you could repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Mr. Ward, you may recall that before you gave evidence on the last occasion, I gave you what I'll call a direction about answering questions which the answers to which might incriminate you. Do you remember me
I
doing
recall
that?
that, yes.
Since a number of months have gone by, I think it's appropriate that I remind you of that before you answer questions this morning. All right. So it will be in very similar terms, if not identical, to the direction I gave you on the previous occasion when you gave evidence. So under our law, a witness at a public inquiry has the right to decline to answer a question put to him by any lawyer at the inquiry, or for that matter, by anyone else, if there is a risk that the answer to that question would incriminate the witness. This legal principle is known in shorthand form as the privilege against self-incrimination. I remind you that it is for you to make it clear to me in respect of any question put to you, if you wish to rely upon the privilege against self-incrimination. So if any questions are put to you by any of the lawyers who ask you questions, or by me, which you do not wish to answer on the ground that to answer might incriminate you, you must tell me immediately after any such question is put to you. At that point, I will consider your objection to answering the question and thereafter rule upon whether your objection should be upheld. Now, you're giving evidence remotely this morning. Do you have the facility to take legal advice from anyone should this issue arise?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Fine. So if this issue does arise, and if you wish to speak to the legal person who is assisting you, you must tell me, and then I will consider whether that is appropriate. All right? So
Okay.
do you understand all that, Mr. Ward?
Yes, sir, I understand.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Beer.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Ward.
Good morning.
You gave evidence on the 1st of February 2024, and I want to ask you some questions today about a single issue, namely your involvement in changes made to Gareth Jenkins' witness statement in the case of Noel Thomas. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
You gave evidence about that issue on the 1st of February 2024. The inquiry is now in possession of material with which we can further explore that issue. Can I recap in general terms of where we were when you gave evidence on the last occasion? We're dealing with events in 2006 where you were the assistant casework manager in the security team. Is that right?
I think in 2006 I was the casework manager.
Okay. And that was a position you'd held since 2002?
Correct.
You told us on the last occasion that you were the casework manager for the case of Noel Thomas and therefore acted as the single point of contact between the post office and Fujitsu in relation to litigation support in that case.
That's correct.
And on the last occasion, we dealt with proposed changes and changes made to a witness statement prepared by Gareth Jenkins for the purpose of the prosecution of Noel Thomas.
That's correct.
Now, before I ask my questions of you, I think it's fair to remind you of what you said on the last occasion about this topic. Now, that's going to involve reading a very significant part of the transcript of your evidence on the last occasion, but it's important that I put the questions that I'm about to ask you in the context of that evidence so that you can see and hear what you said on the last occasion, okay?
Okay.
Can we look, please, at the transcript? It's INQ 401124. And we can see at the top left-hand side, if we can just scroll in on, zoom in on that rather. It's Thursday the 1st of February 2024, and you gave evidence and you swore an oath like you have on this occasion.
Okay.
Can we go forward to page 40, please? And can we look in the bottom right-hand corner, please, at internal pagination 160? And scroll down once more, thank you. Now, this is partly picking it up midway through the topic or partway through the topic, but I had to pick somewhere to start. And this is a good place. It's a gentle run into the questions that matter. I'll read it. It's me speaking, page 160, line 2. We're now in March 2006, and you're emailing the Fujitsu email account in relation to a range of cases. Quote, ARQs, statement request, and assistant, end quote. And you speak about 2 attached files. Quote, both of the above requests relate to cases where the post office are being challenged about the accuracy, ... End quote. You deal with Marine Drive and Torquay Drive next. Further down, if we scroll on, please, then at the bottom of the page, you say, quote, on a separate matter, I also require a witness statement in relation to the following ARQs. And there's one of the ones we've seen already, 401. You say yes, then me. There's also 459 and 460, all of which relate to Mr. Thomas's branch. Quote, we need the usual, leave out paragraph H, B, and J, but we do need K, covering an analysis over the period 1st of November 2004 to 30th of November 2005. Penny, you may recall this one relates to nil transactions. My previous emails refer. Can you add an extra paragraph in your statement explaining how online banking transactions are processed and the data downloaded, and how nil transactions can occur? Then over the page, page 161. So 5 or 6 months has now passed, and you're now asking for a witness statement to address the things that had been mentioned in the 3 emails that you refer to there. Is that right? You. Sounds like it, yes. Me. Can we go to FUJ 00152582, please? Look at page 3, please. This is 11 days later, you emailing Penny Thomas about Mr. Thomas's branch. Quote, these are the nil transactions you sent us and will need to be produced and explained within your, Brian's, statement. End quote. You attach the 401 analysis and then the ARQ data under the numbers 459 and 460, by which time you have now got these, yes. You, yes. Me. If we scroll down to page 2, please, we can see that if we scroll down a little bit in an email that you wouldn't have known about at the time, Brian Pinder of Fujitsu is forwarding that email to Gareth Jenkins. Quote, please see the extract from a recent email below in italics from Graham Ward. Then he extracts your email of the 10th of March that we looked at a moment ago. Quote, regarding providing a statement about nil transactions and online banking. If you're able to put something together for us, I'd be grateful. If you send it back, I'll arrange for Nene or Penny to write into the statement, write into a statement for your signature, end quote. Then he cuts in what you had said in your 10th of March email. Can you see that? You, yeah. Me. The important part is in bold, in italics. Quote, can you add an extra paragraph in your statement explaining how online banking transactions are processed and the data downloaded and how nil transactions can occur, end quote. So this is Mr. Pinder asking Mr. Jenkins to put something together for him or for us, for Fujitsu, in order to address that issue. If we go up to page 1, please, scroll down, please, we can see Mr. Jenkins' reply. Quote, I've had a look at the ARQs, and I think there is sufficient info there to explain in most cases why there are 0 transactions. I suggest that should probably be following as a brief explanation. Quote, 3 main reasons why 0 transactions may be generated as part of the banking system. No financial effect, declined by bank, or there has been some sort of system failure. And scroll down. He gives some examples. Quote, how do you want to play this? Do you want to add in specific text to the witness statement to cover these 2 codes, or persuade Post Office that the generic statement is okay, perhaps with some clearer words? Further up the page, please. She, that's Nana Lowther, says that she's updated your witness statement, Mr. Jenkins' witness statement. She's not included the response below because she's not sure how to fit it in. Could you help? Quote, also, I believe Graham Ward is thinking that system failures are drastic events. And then I asked you, is that true? You said, well, I just wanted them explained. I didn't know whether they were drastic or not. It's just from, and it's going back such a long time, it's so hard to sort of recall what I was thinking. But I'm guessing that the first statement wasn't clear to me at the time, so I just wanted a bit more context around what he meant by system failures. Me. Then scroll up, please. Mr. Jenkins says he's annotated it with revisions and doesn't feel able to include the last 2 paragraphs, which may make the statement useless. Can we now look, please, at the draft that he had previously produced? Can we start with FUJ 00122204? Can we scroll down, please? He says, quote, there are 3 main reasons why a 0 value transaction may be generated. System failure is the 3rd of them. Quote, such failures are normal occurrences. He then sets out in summary terms, in substance, the same thing that he'd said in the email that we looked at about response codes. Can you see that? You, yeah. Yes, I can, yeah. Me, would you agree that this is important information, that a 0 value transaction may be shown or may be generated, including by reason of a system failure? You, yes, it is important, yeah. Me, and that he is saying that such failures are normal occurrences. You say, yeah. Then me, and he's saying that there's a system code that may identify them. You, yeah. I don't know that I was tying in the paragraphs beneath with system failures. Maybe that's just my ignorance of not knowing exactly what nil transactions were. Me, doesn't this explain it? He's numbered paragraph 3, some sort of system failure, is linked to the 3rd bullet attached to this email. And you say, I would like to think, sorry, if we just go back, please, to the previous page. Yeah, stop. Linked to the 3rd bullet point at the bottom of this page. Response code with a value greater than 10 implies some sort of system failure. You, yeah. They're speaking about the same thing, aren't they? You, yeah. I can see that now, yeah. Then if we go forward to page 3, please, those last 2 paragraphs, you can see the one beginning, quote, no reason to believe that. And you say, yeah. Any records which I refer to, and you say, yeah. Then me, you remember he said he didn't feel that he was able to include those. You, yes, I do, yeah. And that may make the statement useless. You say, yeah. I ask, what do you think the purpose of the inclusion of those 2 paragraphs was? You, well, these were 2 general paragraphs that the criminal law team had asked to be included on statements that produced computer evidence. So it was, to my mind, important to have them in there to say that the system was operating properly and didn't affect the information held on it. Me. What did you take from the fact that he thought that these bits, which I think on the original were highlighted in yellow, weren't true, or he wasn't sure were true? You. Well, that would have been a concern, obviously. Me, sorry. You. That would have been a huge concern if he. Me, why would it have been a huge concern? Because if he can't say that the system is operating properly, then you know there's a problem, isn't there? If this wasn't the final statement, was it? Me, no. You, all right. Me, we'll see what happens. What we'll see happens is that he requests for them to be removed. They are removed, and then in the end draft, they came back in. What the statement that was produced in evidence, yes. I don't know anything about that. He says, can this be deleted? All I've done is interpret the data. You say, yeah. In the spreadsheets you've emailed me. Would you have read this at the time, i.e. the attachment to this email? You would have said, you say, I would like to think I would, yeah. Me. This being the attachment to the email you got. You, yeah, I would have thought so, yeah. Do you understand these? Do you understand these, or did you understand these two paragraphs to be statements speaking as to the accuracy and reliability of Horizon generally, or about a system that had been used to extract ARQ data? You, Horizon generally. Me, hence your belief that these were significant omissions. Yeah. Or that they would have been significant omissions. You, yeah. Can we look, please, at FUJ 00122210? If we scroll down on the 24th, i.e. the next day, scroll up, please. Quote, this statement needs more work. You're emailing Naina Lowther, Brian Pinder, Keith Baines, Paul Dawkins, and Diane Matthews. Quote, this statement needs more work. I've attached a suggested draft with a number of comments. As mentioned previously, I think the system failure normal occurrence line is potentially very damaging, end quotes. Firstly, why did you think the, quote, system failure normal occurrence, end quote, line was potentially very damaging? You. Well, just for the reason I've said previously. I think I was just looking for a little bit. It just wasn't clear to me exactly what he meant by it. And that may just be my ignorance of not knowing about banking transactions and nil transactions. But you know, I'm just offering a comment. I'm not trying to lead him into saying anything in his statement or anything like that. I was trying to be helpful, but clearly I wasn't being. As I say, I can see here it says it may be worth someone from our team taking a statement directly from him. Me. Why did you think that was a good idea? I just thought it was getting a bit confusing with his statement, and I just thought maybe it would be best for the investigator dealing with the investigation to actually, deal with it themselves. Me. Why would you be concerned if a person with expertise from Fujitsu is giving technical evidence, the effect of which was damaging? Wouldn't you be pleased with that as an investigator or somebody associated with an investigation? The true position was being revealed. You, well, yeah, when you word it like that, yes. And I really wasn't trying to alter his statement or make him say anything. I was just wanting, clarity on what he meant by, quote, system failures. Me, that's not how it reads, is it? You, no, it's not. You've gone straight to the effect of what he says, i.e. it causes us, the post office, damage. You, yeah, I can see how it looks now. Me, again, is this one of those examples of the way that you were thinking of the time? The important thing is to maintain, even in our prosecutions, the line that Horizon has integrity and produces reliable data. You, I wasn't trying to do that, no. I obviously just had a closed mind to the way I put things across, but I really wasn't trying to. At the end of the day, the truth is more important. And me, we don't see that kind of sentiment in any of your email exchanges, do we? You, well, no, maybe not, but I know the person that I am. Me, I think we can delete maybe from that sentence and replace it with definitely. You say, okay. Me, Can we look, please, at poll 3047895? This is a copy of the marked up witness statement, marked up by you, forwarded by Ms. Lowther to Mr. Jenkins. If we scroll down, please, and if we keep reading, if we just go back to the top, please, then scroll down slowly, please, remaining in the statement in the second paragraph, second line, quote, I was asked to produce information relating to nil transactions. Then if we go to the second page, please, then the paragraph beginning, there are three, we see your comments, quote, there are three. Then you've added, if these are the main three reasons, what are the rest? That's in the nature of a question, both in terms of the words used and the use of the question mark. So that is clarificatory, isn't it? You say yes, I say yes, and you say yes, sorry. Me. So you're genuinely trying to find something out by the look of it there. You say yes. Why a zero transaction may be generated as part of a banking system. Then we see Mr. Jenkins' own words. Transaction has no financial effect. Transaction has been declined by the bank. Then we see the system failure reason missing, don't we? You've deleted it, haven't you? You. No, I wouldn't have deleted anything at all. Me. Well, why doesn't it appear here? You. I don't know. Me. You've typed over it, quote, this is a really poor choice of words, which seems to accept that failures in the system are normal and therefore may well support the Postmaster's claim that the system is to blame for losses, 4 exclamation marks, end quotes. You. No, I would not have typed over anything or deleted anything at all. I just know the person that I am and that I wouldn't have done that. Me. Well, you were concerned, we've seen, that the emails that preceded this with what Mr. Jenkins was proposing to say about system failures, weren't you? You. Yeah, I was concerned, yeah. I just wanted clarity on it, as I said, but I would not have typed over or deleted it. Me. This is the attachment to an email that you sent to Nene Lowther, who in turn sent it on to Mr. Jenkins. You. Right. Do you know where these words have come from then? You. Well, I'm sure I must have typed the words, yeah, but I wouldn't have typed over system failure. Me. Okay, if we move on, next page, please. We see that the paragraphs that were previously in yellow, which Mr. Jenkins said he didn't feel that he could say had been deleted. Did you delete those then? You. No, I can't explain it at all. I would not have written over or deleted anything from anybody's statement. Absolutely not. Me. Can we move on to FUJ 0012-2217? And then the chairman intervenes. Well, before we do, since I think you've just accepted that you attached this witness statement to an email you sent, can you explain where this witness statement came from so as to enable you to attach it to an email? Answer, no, I'm sorry, sir. I just cannot remember, this at all. The chairman. Well, people's memory, of course, it's for them to tell me about, but this is a pretty memorable event, is it not? This is you really becoming involved in an important statement in relation to the prosecution of someone in a way that you'd never done before, as I've understood it. So can you try and rack your memory, please, as to how this statement came to be attached to an email you sent? Honestly, I just can't explain it at all. No, I really can't. We can take that transcript down. That's where the relevant exchanges end. So that's the entirety of the evidence that you gave on the last occasion about the issue of suggesting changes or actually making changes to the witness statement of Gareth Jenkins in the case of the prosecution of Noel Thomas. Mr. Ward, do you accept that on the last occasion you firstly agreed that you sent an email to on the 24th of March 2006 to Fujitsu that had as an attachment to it a marked up copy of Gareth Jenkins' witness statement?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Do you agree that on the last occasion you denied deleting or typing over the system failure reason, the third reason for nil transactions that Mr. Jenkins had given?
Yeah.
And you agree that on the last occasion you said that you didn't know why that line had disappeared from the draft witness statement, but you knew that it wasn't you that had deleted it because that just wasn't you.
Yes, I agree.
Now, the inquiry is in possession of material that may assist us in where the truth lies here, and I want to show you that material in a moment. Can we start, please, however, with what I showed you on the last occasion, the email FUJ 00122210. Thank you. And if we scroll down, please. Thank you. So this is your email of the 24th of March, 2006 at 11:37 in the morning. So this is exactly the same one, exactly the same copy that I showed you on the last occasion.
Okay.
Now, if we just read the two paragraphs of the witness statement, this statement, that's Mr. Jenkins' statement, needs more work. I've attached a suggested draft with a number of comments. As previously mentioned, I think the, quote, system failure normal occurrence, end quote, line is potentially very damaging. It may be worth considering someone from our team taking a statement directly from Gareth. Where is he based? Whilst there's some urgency with this, it's more important to get it right and ensure that we're not embarrassed at court, which we certainly could be if we produced a statement accepting, quote, system failures are normal occurrences, end quote. Then you attach the file, we can see what it's described as there, and let me know what you think of the draft. Then if we just scroll up, please, we can see that Nene Lowther forwards that email on to Gareth Jenkins directly with the attachment that you had included. Yes?
Yes.
Now, on the last occasion, we looked at that attachment as a separate document. I then went to another document. I gave it the name Poll 0004 7895. Another version of it is FUJ 0012 2211. Neither of those need be displayed at the moment. And we looked at that in an imaged copy, which is what this is here. It's an image of an email. Can we now please switch on our system at this end to the original of this email? We've got the original email. Can you see that on your screen?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Can you see the email that we've just looked at the foot of the page there that's being displayed, 24th of March, 11:37, exactly the same email? Yes?
Yes, I can, yeah.
And we can see Nene Lowther forwarding it at the top, just as we've seen in the image of this email that we looked at. But on this occasion, we can actually see the attachment in the email, can't we?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Just like when you're sitting at your computer.
Yes.
This is a more conventional format of an email, which is attaching a Word document. And the difference is we can now open the email attachment. So let's open that. Thank you. And if we just scroll down to look at it. Thank you. I think this will be the more conventional format of a Word document that you'll, in your working life, would have been used to seeing. Would that be right?
Yes, it would, yeah.
And where amendments have been made to a Word document, I think we can see three things. Firstly, if it's enabled, and here it was, the changes are tracked by being put in red and underlined. Yes? That's the first thing we can see.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then the second thing is that if we hover, as the operator kindly has, above an amendment, we can see who made the amendment and the time at which they made it and the date on which they made it. Yes, can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
And so looking here, we can, that's it, if we hover above that one, we can see that that first amendment was made at 10:28 in the morning on the 24th of March, 2006. And would this be right by you? Nobody else had access to your account?
No, that would be me.
Yeah. And then the third thing we can see is on the right-hand side, if there are any formatting changes, those appear in comment boxes on the right-hand side. Yes?
Yes.
Now, we can see if we hovered above each amendment and wrote down the times of them, take it from me, the first amendment was made at 10:21 in the morning. I think that was the first one we were actually hovering over there. That's it, at 10:21. And the last amendment, if we hovered over it, was made at 11:13 a.m. So over the course of 52 minutes. And if we just scroll down and hover again over each amendment, we can see that they're all made by you. Okay?
Yeah.
And if we scroll to the second page, and just pick any amendment, please, operator, at random. And then the one in the middle. Thank you. And then the middle of the page. And then do one at the bottom of the page. And then over the page. Yes? All
Yes.
of the amendments made by you. So these were all made by you, Graham C. Ward. This isn't a case of somebody else surreptitiously logging into your system and pretending to be you. These were amendments made by you.
That's correct, yes.
Can we go back to page 1 and look at the substance then? The first thing that you do in that second paragraph is you were effectively writing in to Mr. Jenkins' witness statement, him exhibiting 3 ARQs, is that right? So it says audit record queries, ARQs, 401, 459, 460. I was asked to produce information relating to nil transactions during the period specified. I've produced 3 spreadsheets, which I now produce as exhibits JIJ 1, 2, and 3. Yes, so that's you writing into Mr. Jenkins' statement the exhibiting by him of the responses to 3 ARQs. Yes?
Yes.
And then scrolling down, is this right? You effectively explain the format of those 3 ARQs.
Yes.
Okay, I've got no questions about that. But if we go to the second page, please, and look at the second big paragraph down, the one beginning, there are 3 main. Originally, the statement read, there are 3 main reasons why a zero value transaction may be generated as part of the banking system. And if we hover above the word main, you deleted that, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then you added in the words, if these are the main reasons, what are the rest? Question mark. And as we established on the last occasion, that was you asking a clarificatory question, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Then the 3 reasons were set out in the witness statement. 1, the transaction has no financial effect, i.e. a balance inquiry or a PIN change. 2, the transaction has been declined by the bank. And then 3, there has been some sort of system failure. Such failures are normal occurrences, end quote. If we hover above those, you deleted those words, didn't you?
Well, I've obviously put a line through it, but as I've said at the outset, what I was doing here was reviewing this statement. My intention was not to insist on anything being put in or removed. I'm just reviewing it as I was asked to do.
In what way is reviewing a statement consistent with putting a line through something and deleting it?
Well, I can't explain that. I really can't.
You agree that you deleted the words, the third reason that Mr. Jenkins had given for a nil transaction value appearing. There has been some sort of system failure. Such failures are normal occurrences. You agree that you deleted those words?
I've put a line through it. Yes, I can see, and it's deleted, and that's what it says on there. But my intention was absolutely not to have anything deleted from that statement that Mr. Jenkins wasn't happy with at all. I was just trying to help him and to review a statement.
Do you agree with this, Mr. Ward, that contrary to your denial on the last occasion, both in answer to questions from me and from the chairman, you did delete the third explanation?
I can see that I've deleted it, yes, but it was not my intention for it to be removed from that statement.
Let's put aside the intention issue for the moment, Mr. Ward. On the last occasion, you denied deleting the third reason. You said it's just not me. I know the type of person I am. Do you agree that, in fact, you did delete that third explanation from Mr. Jenkins' witness statement?
I can see that now, yes.
Can we turn to what you wrote after your deletion? This is a really poor choice of words, which seems to accept that failures in the system are normal and therefore may well support the Postmaster's claim that the system is to blame for the losses, for exclamation marks. Do you agree that that discloses your motive for deleting the third explanation?
No, I don't. No, I don't agree with that. I'm just reviewing a statement. You know, I can see how it looks now. I really can.
Never mind how it looks now. Do you agree that the connection between the deletion of the words and what was in your mind is shown by the explanation that you've added in round brackets?
Yeah, well, I can agree that there's a connection, yes.
And that connection is, it needs to be deleted because if it's left there, it might support the Postmaster, Mr. Thomas's defence. Agreed?
As I've said, you know, my intention was not for anything to be deleted, but I can see that, yes, that's how it looks.
Do you agree that the information that you deleted was material to the prosecution of Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Do you agree that by the time that you deleted it, you knew that a prosecution had been commenced against him?
There may be some confusion. You said Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Deere, but I think we all know Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Thomas, I'm so sorry.
Thomas, yeah.
I'll ask the question again. Did you know that by the time of your deletion, a prosecution had been commenced against Mr. Thomas?
Yes, I knew there was a prosecution against Mr. Thomas.
Do you accept that by your conduct, you caused to be removed material information from Mr. Jenkins' witness statement at the time that a prosecution was afoot against Mr. Thomas?
No, I don't. I think the decision to remove that had to have been Mr. Jenkins' decision. I've made a comment and I've made a review, and I accept that I shouldn't have been doing that. But the final decision to make that statement and for for what went in there, that was for Mr. Jenkins to decide.
You've agreed, I think, that your reason for deleting that line from the statement was that it might support the defendant's case that Horizon was to blame for the losses that were being attributed to him. Agreed?
Yes.
If we read on, as per the original witness statement, it said each transaction has with it a response code field which identifies what has happened. Those values are included together with their descriptions. Originally it said ARQs, and you've added spreadsheets produced. And then in summary, I'm going to skip over the next two paragraphs, which deal with values of 1 or between 2 and 10. But the third one, which you do not amend, is a response code, RESP code, with a value greater than 10 implies some sort of system failure. The actual value provides further information as to the nature of the failure within the overall system. So rather oddly, you've left that in the witness statement, haven't you?
Yes.
Was that just a mistake by you, that it ought to have been, if you were acting consistently with your earlier deletion, to have been deleted as well, i.e. the mention of a system failure?
No, not at all. It's not a mistake. I mean, there's just a bit more context.
What does that mean, Mr. Ward? You deleted the system failure reason why 0 transactions may be generated, but left in an explanation of the response code values relating to system failure.
Well, as I say, going back 18 years or whatever it is now, I can't really remember what I would have been thinking then, but the fact that that paragraph there has a little bit more information in it, made sense to me then.
What do you mean that paragraph had a bit more information made sense to you?
It's got a value greater than 10 implies some sort of system failure. There's a bit more information than just saying system failure. That is all I can think that I would have been thinking at that time.
But you wanted the system failure reason deleted.
I didn't want it deleted, no.
Why did you delete it?
As I've said, yes, it looks. I've put a line through it, and I've put in brackets that I think it's a poor choice of words. But that is just me reviewing it. I'm not for 1 second suggesting anything needs to be removed from the finalised statement.
You didn't just say it was a poor choice of words. In the brackets, you said that if we leave those words in, it, quote, may well support the sub-postmaster's claim that the system is to blame for the losses. That's what was motivating you, wasn't it?
No, I don't believe it was, no. I mean, it's just a poor choice of words.
Poor choice of words by who?
Well, by me, obviously.
Why, when you spent 52 minutes amending this witness statement, did you select a poor choice of words?
Well, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm just going to repeat what I've said. I mean, I haven't got anything else I can add to it. I was trying to genuinely help put a statement together for him. Back in 2006, Horizon integrity just wasn't an issue for us at all. And this was a fairly new statement, as I said on my previous evidence, I think, a banking transaction witness statement. So I was just trying to get the statement correct. That was my intention. And I'm really sorry for the way it comes across, I really am, but I was trying to just do my job.
that last paragraph there, the one that says response code with a value greater than 10, you're not saying to us that you left that in the witness statement because you thought that that was a sufficient explanation to a court and gave adequate disclosure to a defendant, and that was therefore justification for deleting the third reason from Mr. Jenkins' list?
Well, I really don't know. But I just think there's more context to it there. That's all I can say. I'm sorry, it's such a long time ago. I really just do not remember this at all.
Can I suggest one explanation, that this was a rather sloppy attempt at covering up in criminal proceedings evidence of system faults within Horizon, and that if you'd been pursuing your motive properly, you would have also deleted that last paragraph that we've just read? It's just a mistake by you that you haven't seen through the task that you were setting for yourself.
No, that's absolutely not. I wouldn't agree there. I'm not trying to cover anything up at all. I'm just trying to get a statement correct.
Your motive was that you didn't want to disclose in the prosecution of Noel Thomas information that suggested that a fault in Horizon could have caused nil transactions. Agreed?
No, I don't agree.
Can we look, please, lastly, at the original email FUJ 0012 2210? And look at your email. We just scroll down. Thank you. You say this statement needs more work. That's the statement that we've just read. I've attached a suggested draft with a number of comments. And then you say, as previously mentioned, I think the, quote, system failure normal occurrence line is potentially very damaging. So the very line that you deleted, you recognise to be, quote, potentially very damaging. Agreed?
Yes, but I just wanted more context on it, as I've said.
You say that that line that you deleted was potentially very damaging. That again draws a direct line between the reason for the deletion of the line and the deletion of the line, doesn't it?
I can see that it looks that way, yes.
Well, it is that way, isn't it? That's the motive right there in black and white. I'm deleting it because it's potentially very damaging.
There is no motive from me to remove anything, because at the time there was absolutely, in my head, no issues with Horizon at all.
If we look at the second paragraph, whilst there's some urgency with this, it's more important to get it right and ensure we're not embarrassed at court, which we certainly could be if we produced a statement accepting, quote, system failures are normal occurrences. Again, that's the third occasion, one in the witness statement itself, in your comment, and the other two in the covering email, this email, that reveals what was operating on your mind. Agreed?
I think what I take from that is it's more important to get it right, because I want to get the statement right. I didn't think there were any issues with Horizon. We weren't told there were any issues with Horizon. So the idea that I'd be covering anything up just wouldn't have been in my head at all.
Why did you say we need to ensure we're not embarrassed at court, which we could be if we produced a statement accepting system failures are normal occurrences?
Because I wanted more context on what system failures there were.
In which case you would have typed, Mr. Ward, can I have some more context, please, on what system failures are? Rather than deleting system failures from the witness statement and saying 3 times, we need to delete this because it's damaging, it's potentially embarrassing, and it would assist the sub-postmaster's defence?
I can see how you would say that, yes. I do understand that, but as I've said, I don't recall finalising the final statement either, and that's why I'm suggesting that somebody from the team should go and take the statement directly.
Your motive was a desire that the Post Office was not embarrassed at court by revealing that Horizon had defects, system errors, wasn't it?
No, not at all. My desire was that the statement was produced correctly. I was unaware that there were bugs, errors and defects in the Horizon system.
Mr. Jenkins was saying that there are defects in the system in his witness statement, and you were deleting that information.
He said there were system failures.
And you wanted that deleted.
I didn't want it deleted, no.
Why did you delete it?
I didn't delete it, as I've said to you.
In what sense is striking through a sentence in track changes and providing 3 explanations why that should be removed not a case of deletion?
I can see how it looks. I really can. And I'm sorry it looks that way, but I can assure you my intention was not for that to be deleted.
Mr. Ward, they're the only questions that I ask you. Sir, do you have any questions?
No, thank you very much.
Sir, that's all of the evidence from Mr. Ward this morning. Because he's remote, we need to take a break now until we move to our next witness who's live.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you for returning to give evidence, Mr. Ward. That completes your evidence to the inquiry. So we'll now have a 10-minute break, Mr. Beer?
Yes, I think probably 15 actually to get the
All right.
out.
Fine. 15-minute break before we resume. So that will be, well,
10 to?
10 to, oh, that, yeah, 10 to 11, yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning, sir. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, thank you very much.
So our next witness is Anthony Kearns.
Yeah.
Please could the witness be sworn?
Repeat after me. I do solemnly,
I do solemnly,
sincerely and truly
declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and
nothing but the truth.
Mr. Kearns, as you know, my name is Miss Hodge and I ask questions on behalf of the inquiry. Please give your full name.
Anthony Paul Kearns.
You should have in front of you a witness statement dated the 9th of May of this year. Have you got that there, please?
I have.
This is the second statement which you've provided to the inquiry, is that correct?
It is.
It runs to 15 pages. Could I ask you please to turn to page 14 of that statement? Do you see your signature there at the end of the statement?
It's actually not on this hard copy I've got.
If you could just bear with us, we'll ensure that you have a copy with your signature.
Yes.
Thank you. So you can see your signature there at the end of the statement dated 9th of May of this year. That's right.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Is the content of that statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
It is.
Thank you. That statement will stand as your evidence to the inquiry in phases 5 and 6. I shall be asking you some questions that seek to expand upon and clarify some aspects of your evidence. You first appeared before the inquiry on the 29th of November 2022 when we were examining issues of relevance to phase 2. Is that correct?
Correct.
I don't intend to revisit those issues with you, save to the extent that they are relevant to the issues that we're examining in phases 5 and 6. Is that clear?
It is.
Thank you. Now, in terms of your roles and responsibilities, you were previously employed as an assistant secretary of the Communication Workers Union between 1997 and 2002. Is that right?
That's correct.
whilst employed in that role, your primary responsibility was to promote the interests of CWU members who were employed by Post Office Limited, is that right?
Correct.
This would have included Post Office counter clerks who were employed at Crown Office branches, staff working in cash centres, and administration staff working in the Post Office's back offices, is that right?
Correct.
You say that since 2002 you've been employed as the Senior Deputy General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, is that right?
That's correct.
You were elected to perform that role by the members of the union, is that
Yes.
right? In your statement you say you've not had any direct responsibility for Post Office matters since your appointment as Senior Deputy General Secretary, is that
That's correct.
Who within the senior leadership of the Communication Workers Union has had direct responsibility for postal matters since 2002?
Andy Fury.
Thank you. I'd like very briefly to revisit some of the evidence which you gave on the last occasion about your role as a member of the Horizon Working Group during 1999 to 2000. This was at a time when you were employed as Assistant Secretary with responsibility for Post Office employees, is that right?
Yes.
The Horizon Working Group had been established to oversee the operational live trial and later the national rollout of the Horizon system to the Post Office network. Is that correct?
Correct.
You confirmed on the last occasion that you gave evidence to the inquiry that you were made aware of technical issues being raised during the live trial. Is that right?
Correct.
And you understood these to relate to balancing. Is that right?
I was informed by Crown Office staff on visits that I would make to local branches that some individuals were experiencing difficulties with balancing following the introduction of the Horizon project.
And just to confirm, by balancing, you mean that whether the money received in and paid out by the branch was accurately recorded in the weekly financial accounts, is that right?
Each counter clerk employed at a Crown Office is responsible for their own individual balance. On a Wednesday, they ended the balancing week, and that's when that balance takes place.
I think you said on the last occasion that problems with balancing had been reported to you before Horizon was implemented. That's correct, is it not?
Yeah, we regularly had staff who reported difficulties with balancing prior to and subsequent to the introduction of Horizon.
But you said that after the introduction of Horizon, it was your perception at the time that the number of people reporting problems had increased.
Yes.
Is that right? And I think you've just confirmed that that was information you'd obtained during your visits to local branches.
Correct.
Were these problems with balancing an issue that you were recording or tracking at a national level within the Communication Workers Union at the time?
No, we had a process, which I think I outlined in my witness statement, for how losses and gains or incorrect balances were dealt with through a system losses and gains procedure that was in place at the time and subsequent to the Horizon project.
We'll come on shortly to that, but just dealing firstly with the issue of how the issue was being, let's say, monitored. I think your evidence is it wasn't at a national level. Is that fair? That is to say that you weren't keeping records or you weren't tracking the number of branches or the number of staff who were having difficulties with balancing?
No, there was no facility or process for that.
Would it be fair to say that you were relying on those local procedures to identify whether balancing problems were caused by the system or by the performance of the employee?
Yes, that would be dealt with through that losses and gains procedure at various levels.
Do you think that local representatives and branch managers would have had sufficient knowledge or understanding to identify whether a balancing problem was caused by the system or by the employee's performance?
I couldn't say whether they were able to identify specifically whether a misbalance, a loss or a gain, was directly attributable to the system.
If you were not tracking the issue at a national level, how would your local reps know whether they were dealing with an isolated incident or an issue affecting several branches or employees?
I think I made either in one of my statements or last time I gave evidence. So we have a network of representatives who operate at local branch level, sort of area level, a regional level, and then a national executive. And what would happen if somebody was, so there was a process in place, a losses and gains procedure. And what would happen is if somebody was considered by the post office to be fallen foul of that procedure, they would be called for interview. They would talk to their local rep or their area rep or their regional rep and ask for representation. So dealing with those, the idea of that system, as the idea, all of the agreements and sort of the industrial relations framework we had with the post office at the time, and still through to today, is to get these matters dealt with, for want of a better phrase, at the coalface, at the lowest common place you can deal with it. So people having local first-hand knowledge would be the office rep. Subsequent to that would be the area rep. So if someone found themselves in difficulty over the losses and gains procedure and was going to be called for interview, they would contact their local rep or their local union branch and they would deal with the issue. So those issues were dealt with predominantly by at a local level.
I understand the point you're making, but I think the gist of my point is this: if it's not being looked at a national level, would those local reps and those local branches, would they be able to know that this was something that was affecting more than one area, do you think?
Yeah, we would have regular meetings of local reps would meet regularly at branch level. Area reps, regional reps would get together and discuss the problems that they were facing and how best to deal with them.
So you would have expected that to have been discussed at the branch level and at the regional level if it had been something that was causing significant difficulties.
If those reps had a wide scale concern, yeah, I would expect them to discuss it with each other. Standard practice in sort of sharing. I've got this problem, how have you dealt with that? I've got a new problem, how have you dealt with that? So how reps sort of interact and build up their knowledge.
Now, when you finished in your role as Assistant Secretary, to whom did you hand over responsibility in 2002?
Andy Fury was elected, so it wasn't me handing over responsibility, he was elected by the membership.
Into the role of Assistant Secretary?
Into the role of that Assistant Secretary.
Did you brief him on the knowledge you'd obtained during your time as a member of the Horizon Working Group?
Andy Fury was an elected member of our National Executive prior to being elected to that position. And given that his background he was directly employed by the Post Office as a counter clerk, Crown Office staff, he worked closely with me and would attend a lot of national negotiations. So in reality, there was no formal handover insofar as he'd worked in my department with me for the previous 5 years. So he was more than well aware and was involved in a lot of discussions about these matters up to that point.
So your evidence is you wouldn't have done a formal handover, is that right?
It's correct.
But you think you would have discussed issues, including issues with balancing, with him before he took over that role?
Myself and Andy worked almost together on a daily basis over a number of years, and anything I was aware of in my role, he was aware of.
I'd like to move on, please, to a new topic, another topic which concerns the support and the representation which was available to members of the Communications Workers Union if they were held accountable for shortfalls shown by Horizon. Now, you address this at paragraph 33 of your second witness statement, please, if that could be shown on the screen, WITN 06370-200 at page 7. Thank you. Page 33, paragraph 33, please. Thank you. This reads, the CWU has always provided strong and effective representation for members accused of accounting discrepancies. Just pausing there, please. Is that assertion based upon your personal experience of representing members of the CWU?
It is.
Are you referring here to cases where the accounting discrepancies were shown by Horizon?
I'm referring to cases that our members would be called for interview under the losses and gains procedure.
And is that, you said you're talking about your own personal experience, is that before Horizon was implemented or after Horizon, or both?
But both. The losses and gains procedure is what was used to, for want of a better phrase, measure the ability of counter clerks to do their job. I was a counter clerk before I was an elected representative, and the losses and gains procedure in various formats, been rewritten a number of times, is the measure that individual counter clerks are held to see whether or not they can do their job. Each individual counter clerk, as I explained earlier, balances their stock on a Wednesday evening. That would either balance or it will produce a loss or a gain, either of which, in the eyes of the post office, losses and gains are considered to be evidence of an inability to do the job to varying degrees, and there can be a variety of reasons why people record losses and gains, and then there was a process to take people through to investigate why those losses and gains have occurred, mostly designed to be corrective.
Mr. Kearns, I wonder if I could please ask you if you can try to slow down in your answers, please, just to assist our stenographer who's making a verbatim record of what you're saying.
Apologies.
Thank you. Forgive me, coming back to the question, please. Is it your evidence that you have personal experience of representing members of the Communication Workers Union who were accused of accounting discrepancies after Horizon was rolled out?
Me personally, no.
No. Are you aware of any specific cases in which members were asked to account for shortfalls shown by Horizon?
No.
Now, you stated that your responsibilities relating to the Post Office ceased in 2002. From where have you obtained your knowledge of cases after that date?
I don't really have any detailed knowledge of cases after that date because it wasn't my responsibility, it wasn't my day job. I've paid a general interest to the union structures and how it represents its members since then, because that's my job to sort of oversee partly how the union functions. But I don't have any first-hand experience since I left that role in 2002 of individual cases.
So would it be right to say that as a general assertion that you're making there, it's not one based on any personal experience after 2002?
Apologies, general assertion.
So
what?
You're making a general assertion that the CWU has always provided strong and effective representation for members accused of accounting discrepancies. What I've been trying to explore to you is the basis of that assertion. And I think what you accept is that after 2002, you had no personal experience of those matters, and you don't have any information about any individual cases. Is that right?
I don't have any personal experience, and I didn't deal with any individual cases. My assertion about the CW dealing with them is that the reps structures that we had in place to deal with those issues it's changed, but it remains broadly the same, as in we have local reps, branch reps, what used to be called regional reps are now called territorial reps, who deal with those issues on a day-to-day basis, and that procedure remains largely in place, as does a losses and gains procedure that they would work with.
Now, before we come to losses and gains procedure, do you know what type of training union representatives received to enable them to provide support to staff who have found themselves in this situation where they're being asked to account for discrepancies?
Yes, we would run what we would call schools, educational classes, every time, more or less every time a major agreement would change, and we would get reps together at varying levels, explain to them the changes any changes we negotiated in policies and procedures, and train them through what we would call basic skills. We now call them skills 1, skills 2, on how to be an effective rep, how to engage with an individual who might be having problems, how to represent that to the employer. We had an education and training program designed to do just that.
Now, you go on to say at paragraph 33 that the CWU collective agreements, including the losses and gains procedure, have been significant in ensuring a fair hearing for directly employed members. You've referred to that procedure in your evidence before the inquiry on the last occasion. I think you recall it being in place at the time when you were Assistant Secretary, and you've said just now it's something which has been updated over the years. Is that correct?
That's correct. I was employed by the Post Office in 1978, and there was a losses and gains procedure in place then. And some of the papers sent to me show a losses and gains procedure from, I think it's 2013 and 2014, a losses and gains procedure for directly employed counter clerks, as we used to call them, by the Post Office has been in place for that length of time.
Now, would it be a fair summary to say that policy applied a threshold, or a number of thresholds, below which an accounting discrepancy would be treated as a performance issue, but above which it might be treated as suspected theft? Is that a fair summary?
No, that's not how the losses and gains procedure was applied. The losses and gains procedure, if individuals fell foul of that procedure, they were given the opportunity to explain why they thought that. The Post Office would be saying to them, your performance is unacceptable, we need improvements. They'll be given deadlines or a number of specific occasions where they were allowed to misbalance before more serious disciplinary action would ensue. My experience is that mostly people would understand the seriousness of the situation, for a better phrase, apply themselves more diligently to their job, and were very unlikely to fall foul of that procedure to the point of dismissal.
I think if we put to one side what might be characterised as small discrepancies in the order of £5 or £6, which would ordinarily be treated as a performance matter, is that fair?
Yes.
And if we consider a more substantial discrepancy in the order of several £100 or possibly even several £1,000, a discrepancy of that type, would it not be referred to the Post Office to be investigated as suspected criminal activity?
My experience was single large losses like that would be dealt with outside of this process and would usually be subject to a specific investigation.
So if Horizon was showing a substantial shortfall, which a Post Office staff member could not explain, they would not be helped by this procedure, would they? That is to say that they would be in exactly the same position as a sub-postmaster who had a substantial shortfall which they couldn't explain, would they not?
If at the end of the week an individual counter clerk's balance at a pre or post Horizon showed up a significant amount of the amounts that you've referred to, my experience is that would be investigated by the Post Office investigation branch, as it was then, or whatever its title is now.
And essentially, you as the CWU and that staff member would be reliant upon the Post Office investigating the cause of the shortfall, would you not? And establishing whether any fault lay within the system.
Yeah, the Post Office they would interview the individual for their view of why such a loss occurred, and then the Post Office would make its own investigations.
Now, if we go back, please, to your statement at paragraph 33, you go on to say that the CWU has no record of any of our directly employed members losing their jobs or being prosecuted due to problems with Horizon. What I want to ask you is this: does the CWU make and retain records relating to the dismissal or the prosecution of its employees, of its members?
No.
If you don't have any record, or if you don't make and retain such records, does it not follow that there might well be directly employed members who have lost their jobs or been prosecuted due to problems with Horizon, of which you're not aware?
That's possible.
So would it not be more accurate to say that you don't know whether, and if so, how many of your members have lost their jobs or been prosecuted due to problems with Horizon, because this isn't something which you've actively monitored?
So the statements I make, which is the CJO has no record of any of our directly employed members losing their jobs or being prosecuted due to problems with Horizon, it is a statement of fact as far as I'm concerned. We don't have that record. Because of the extensive network we have of reps and the relationship we have between the national officials and our local reps and regional reps, my belief is that we would be made aware if individuals had come to our reps at local level and said to us, we're losing our jobs, or we're being, let's take the issue of prosecution. If any of our members were to be prosecuted over that, we're fairly certain that they would come to our reps through the process I've outlined. And if our reps thought that was a problem, they would come to us, but we don't have any record of that.
Now, I think what you've just said really is that you make an assumption that that information would have filtered its way up to national headquarters if that had been the case. Is that fair?
Yeah, we would assume our reps would tell us if they were being asked by our members to assist them in such cases.
You've also said earlier that you would have expected these issues, accounting discrepancies, to be resolved at a local level, and that you didn't expect that to be something that would be escalated to national level.
Are they two separate things?
In what sense?
So I work at a Crown office. I used to work at a Crown office, and I work alongside people who, on a Wednesday night, would do their balance and would misbalance more regularly than the losses and gains procedure at the time allowed for. So they would be interviewed by the post office with their union rep or their local area union rep, and they would go through the losses and gains process with the intention of rectifying their performance on the job, so to speak. They were regular occurrences. When I was a local rep, I used to deal with those cases on behalf of members, 1 or 2 a month. They're just dealt with at local level, and that's where it ends. And that's the idea of that procedure, is to rectify those problems, for a better phrase, at the coal phase, so as the individual counter clerk can prove that they're doing their job properly. It's also true to say that if our members were being dismissed or prosecuted and our reps felt that was, for a better phrase, unfair and wanted to defend them and wanted our assistance in helping them do that, they would come to us.
And are you saying that at that stage there would be some record held centrally of a request for assistance, or that effectively you would have some record showing that that request had been made?
Yeah, if somebody wanted us to help assist them in representing the member, they would email at that back to 99, write to us with details of the case, asking us could we assist, or as it was possible to assist, depending on the nature of the individual case.
But any record of that would have been in emails at the time, which presumably you haven't gone back and checked over, have you? So,
we asked our research department what documents, and I think our research department and Andy Fiori's department, my successor in our previous role, have provided a number of documents to the inquiry over the last couple of years with regards to what information we have around Horizon. And we haven't come across, to my knowledge, we've not come across any correspondence, emails or letters of that type.
Now, the final thing you say in paragraph 33 is this. There have been cases of actual theft amongst CWU represented grades, but invariably when people are caught out, they are quick, thank you, to admit to theft. In these cases, the CWU is generally not involved, as people resign before being dismissed. Now, again, are you speaking here from your personal experience of dealing with cases of theft?
Yes.
On how many occasions were you called upon to deal with cases of theft by CWU staff members while you worked as the Assistant Secretary?
Not when I worked as the Assistant Secretary, but when I worked as a local rep. When I was a local rep back in Liverpool. When I worked as a local rep back in Liverpool, I dealt with, from memory, from 30 years ago, from memory, 3 cases of individuals accused of theft.
And was it your experience that members who were accused of theft by the post office always admitted their guilt?
Of the 3 cases I remember dealing with, 1 didn't, and we subsequently won that case in employment tribunal. The post office had no evidence. 1 individual, I think I made this in my earlier submission, 1 individual was accused of stealing £500, who denied it right up until the final interview, and then admitted it, and then resigned, and then was subsequently prosecuted.
Were you involved in any cases of alleged theft after Horizon was rolled out?
No.
And therefore, insofar as you make a general statement about cases of theft, is it right to say that wouldn't apply to the period after 2002, of which you didn't have any personal experience?
I have no experience after 2002. Sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding the question.
Sorry, it was badly phrased, so that's my fault. I'm saying insofar as you make a general statement about cases of theft, it's right to say that applies prior to 2002, but not afterwards. Is that fair?
I wasn't dealing with them after 2002, but generally, that's why I say in my statement, generally, is the CJO generally is not involved. As my experience is, if people are guilty, then they resign rather than wait to be dismissed. I've seen that prior to 2002.
Thank you. Now, when you previously gave evidence, you said that you were aware of the Post Office practice of prosecuting staff members, and you've just referred now to an instance of that. You also stated that prior to Horizon, I think you'd represented a member of the CWU who'd gone on to be prosecuted by the Post Office. In which type of hearings would you be representing individuals at that stage?
So the individual concerned showed a £500 loss in their weekly balance. They were then called to interview by the Post Office Investigation Branch, and they're allowed to have a friend witnessing, and the Post Office Investigation Branch puts it to them that a loss of that figure, around 500, couldn't possibly be a discrepancy. It was theft, and the individual denied it, and we went through the process of them being dismissed, me doing the appeal, and it was at the appeal stage that the individual changed their position and said that, in fact, they did steal the money. So, yeah, that's how that process is dealt with. So under the investigation process, the individual is allowed to have a witness, friend, whatever you want to call it, in the room with them, predominantly to make sure that that interview is conducted correctly, fair play, in line with rules. Yeah, and so I've dealt with that case.
So you would have dealt with it, and others in your position would have dealt with it at the stage of the internal disciplinary hearing, is
Yes.
that right? And any appeal hearing,
Yes.
which followed. Did the CWU offer legal representation to members against whom criminal proceedings were brought by the Post Office?
CW does not offer legal assistance to members for criminal cases.
And that's in any circumstances?
To best of my knowledge and experience, yes.
You've been shown some statistics relating to the number of prosecutions brought against sub-postmasters, assistants, and Post Office employees in the decade before and in the decade after Horizon was introduced. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, it's right to acknowledge that the records on which these statistics are based are incomplete, particularly insofar as they relate to the decade before Horizon was implemented. But I think you accept, do you not, that on the basis of the data we do have, it tends to show a substantial increase in the number of prosecutions brought against Post Office employees after Horizon was rolled out. Is that fair?
They appear to double 2002 over 2001, 2003 over 2001, drop back down again 2004. So they fluctuate. But it's certainly true to say in 1990, assuming we're all reading off the same thing, it says in 1999 for employees, which is the people we were responsible for, there were 5. In 2001 there were 6, and then in 2002 there were 13. In 2003 there were 13. 2004 that dropped back down to 7, then up to 11, then down to 6. So it fluctuates, but it is correct to say that in 2002, 2003 there were more than there were in 2001 and 1999.
Now, in your most recent statement, you say that you were not aware at the time of the rise in prosecutions and convictions of Post Office employees. Is that right?
That's correct.
Do you think you should have been aware, or that you should have known about this in your role as Assistant Secretary and subsequently as Senior Deputy General Secretary of the Union?
No, because as I said earlier, they wouldn't get reported to us at national level. Sorry.
But I think you said the opposite. I think you said you would have expected, had members been prosecuted, you would have expected that to have reached you at national level because you would have been told that.
No, I would have expected if our local reps thought that they should have been involved, they thought something wasn't right, I would have expected them to have raised it with us at national level.
So your expectation...
So I referred earlier to, they would email us or they would write to us saying, we've got a problem here, can you assist? And so I say we have no record of that. So that's why we wouldn't have been aware of, 1999, 5 prosecutions, if I'm reading this correctly, 2001, 6 prosecutions, if I'm reading it correctly. We would only be aware, or we would have been made aware, if representatives who had been dealing with those cases had contacted us, basically to say, I've been dealing with this case, it looks like they're going to dismiss them, it looks like they're going to prosecute them, we don't think that's fair, we don't think that's right, is there something we can do, can we talk about this, so on and so forth. I have no recollection of people coming to me in my role as the Assistant Secretary at national level on raising that type of complaint, if you like, or concern.
What you seem to be saying essentially is that you were relying upon your local rep to effectively to identify if there was a system fault, were you not?
That is the system we have in place. As I explained earlier, the idea of dealing with discrepancies or even not just discrepancies in balancing, if you like, on the counter, but any discipline cases for any reason, insubordination, failure to attend for duty, the whole system was set up to deal with those issues quickly at the point that they occurred. And then there would be a process you would go through where in more serious cases, they would be escalated up in terms of the post office, their managerial structure, and in the case of the union, our representative structure. And that's how the issues would be dealt with. So insofar as we would have no record of, let's say in 1999, exactly how many individual members of the CWU were interviewed under the losses and gains procedure, we wouldn't have that record because they were dealt with locally. So in the same way, if somebody was prosecuted, unless those individuals contacted us, unless representatives contacted us, we would have no record of that.
Okay, so unless either the member themselves or the local rep came to you and said, I'm being prosecuted because of a shortfall in Horizon, which isn't my fault, it's the system at fault, you're saying that there would be no record and you would have no awareness of the fact of prosecutions being brought? We
would have no awareness at national level, no.
Now, given what you knew about problems with balancing during the rollout of Horizon, do you think that the bringing of prosecutions by the Post Office is something which you ought to have been monitoring at a national level?
we weren't aware of the prosecutions at national level, so we wouldn't have been monitoring it.
Well, but my point is you knew that the Post Office brought prosecutions. Is that not something which you should have proactively been monitoring?
We were. So let me just step back on the. We were aware of the Post Office bringing prosecutions at national level. We don't have a record. We don't keep a record of the prosecutions that the Post Office carries out. I think it's the point I made in my statement is usually historically by the time it got to that point, we'd have individuals resigning, so we wouldn't have a record of the prosecutions that the Post Office took out against direct employees.
I understand what you're saying, which is you didn't have one. My question was, do you think you should have had one, bearing in mind that you knew that there were increased numbers of Post Office staff who were complaining about problems with balancing?
No, because they were dealt with under the balancing procedure.
I'd like to move on to another topic, please, which concerns the CWU's representation of sub-postmasters. When you worked as an assistant secretary, the CWU did not represent the interests of sub-postmasters, is that
No,
right?
that's correct.
Do you know why it was that sub-postmasters were not admitted as members of the CWU at that stage?
Because they were members of the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters. And that was, so within the Post Office at the time, there were a number of different unions. There was the Post Office Engineering Union, who were responsible for lighting, heating, vans. There was the Communication Workers Union, who were responsible for directly employed Post Office staff working on Post Office, what now Royal Mail issues as well. There was the Communication Managers Association, who were responsible for representing managers, and there was the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters, who were responsible for representing sub-postmasters. And so if you fell into one of those categories, the recognition of the employer for anybody employed in those categories were in those unions. So the reason we didn't represent them is because we didn't have recognition agreements and they joined the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters.
In your statement, you say that you don't consider the interests of sub-postmasters and post office employees necessarily to be aligned. Is that right?
I do say that, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because sub-postmasters, so Crown Office staff, Post Office staff, were directly employed employees of the Post Office. Sub-postmasters, to my knowledge and recollection, worked on a contractual basis as private business people, for want of a better phrase, and had a private contract with the Post Office. So there were two distinct different groups. One were directly employed workers, the other were privately employed, private businesses, and directly engaged, if you like, as agents by the Post Office. So two separate interests. So we would negotiate and argue, for example, for increased wages and terms and conditions for directly employed staff, whereas my understanding at the time is the contract between the Post Office and sub-postmasters would remunerate sub-postmasters based on the transactions they did, which are two distinctly different things. They're not aligned.
Now, there came a time when the CWU started to recruit sub-postmasters as members of the union. Do you recall when efforts were first made to recruit sub-postmasters?
Only from evidence that's been given to me in this and from my involvement on a National Executive Council from the union. I think that was around 2014, 2015.
Now, you've been shown a printout from the CWU website, which tends to indicate that the union were actively recruiting sub-postmasters in October 2011. That's NFSP 00001463, please. Thank you very much. If you look at the very bottom of the, thank you. If you look at the very bottom of the page, please. I think you can see this is from where it's drawn, so www.cwu.org/postmasters, and the date's the 3rd of October 2011.
Yep.
If we could just scroll down, please. Thank you. So in that first box, it identifies the chairman of what was called the CWU Postmasters and Agents section, and that's Mr. Nippy Singh. And a little further down, please. Thank you. There's a further box which identifies Mark Baker as the vice chairman of the same section. So it appears that by this time in October 2011, the CWU had established a separate section to represent the interests of postmasters and agents. Do you think that's a fair inference from what we can see here? Do you recall the circumstances in which these two individuals, Mr. Baker and Mr. Singh, joined the Communication Workers Union?
No, I wasn't involved in that. But from discussions, I was on. So the final decision on allowing them or setting up a sub-postmaster section and actively trying to recruit them was a decision of the National Executive Council, of which I was a member. And my understanding from memory, although I'm talking about 9-10 years ago now, is that they had a sort of dissatisfaction with the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters. They had a dissatisfaction with the direction the post office was going in a general sense. And my understanding was they didn't have much faith in the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters representing them, which is why they approached us. And then we went, well, if you're going to approach us and we're going to set up a section, we're going to try to recruit more people from that cohort into the union.
Now, in your statement, you say that one of the roles of the union is to regulate tension between its members. Is that right?
Between its members and the employer.
Between members and employer, but but internally between members as well. Is that not right?
Do I say that in my statement?
If we go, please, to page 3, paragraph 8b. Thank you. So in the preceding paragraph, you describe the objectives of the union, and you go on to say here at B, they are to regulate the tensions between members and their employers and between members.
Yeah.
Do you consider that tensions existed or exist between the interests of sub-postmasters and post office employees, bearing in mind what you've said about their interests not necessarily being aligned?
No, I don't. No, I don't think there's a tension. We can represent and do represent separate groups of workers to the employers who not necessarily in the same workplace, not necessarily in the same, if you like, industry. So no, I don't believe that. No.
Thank you. Another related topic, please, which concerns the relationship between the Communication Workers Union and the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters. In your statement, you say at the time when you worked as Assistant Secretary, the two organisations held equal status. Is that fair?
They were both recognised by the employer, by the post office, as having negotiating rights. So yeah, equal status insofar as they could both directly represent to the post office the concerns of their members.
And you said you would occasionally communicate on key issues and priorities, but you did not collaborate on projects or member representation. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, there came a time when the Federation and the union discussed a possible merger. Do you recall that?
I don't.
It may assist you, please, if we could...
Sorry. Generally, yes. I think we were approached by the then General Secretary. I think at the time was George Thompson. But that wasn't my day job, so that approach would have been through Andy Fiore and the then General Secretary, I think, Billy Hayes. So only in the sense that we were also approached once by the Society of Telecom Executives, which was the managers in BT, where we also have members. And over the years, we do have general discussions with other unions and representative bodies about whether or not there is common ground, or there's the possibility of us merging, or there any common interests. So yeah, that approach, or whether they approached us or we approached them, I don't know, because I was not involved. But I'm aware that a discussion took place.
Thank you. Could we please bring up CWU 00000076? Thank you. As you can see, this is a report to the National Executive Council on the 18th of June 2015 for consideration and to meeting scheduled for the 25th of June. Were you a member of the NEC at this time?
Correct. I was.
Did you receive a copy of this report?
I would have done.
And you would have read it, presumably, at the time?
Yes.
Now, to place this in context, can we please take a look at the heading and introduction? So this report relates to the NFSP, Post Office Limited and CWU. Under introduction it reads, "It is prudent for us to consider the challenges, opportunities and options for the CWU given the likelihood that the NFSP special conference next month decides not to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Post Office in preference to a transfer of engagements to us or the National Federation of Retail News Agents." This is a reference, is it not, to what later became known as the Grant Framework Agreement that was concluded between the NFSP and the Post Office in July of that year. Are you aware of?
I'm not aware of that last point. As I said, my understanding was, along with other unions over a period of time, the NFSP had approached us, as well as others, including the National Federation of Retail News Agents here, to understand or identify what scope there was for the two organisations to come together. But I wasn't aware of that other point, as I say, because that was no longer my area of responsibility.
What this appears to suggest is that approach you say you received from the NFSP seems to have come at a time when they were also in negotiations with the Post Office over a possible long-term partnership and a funding arrangement. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I referenced discussions we'd had with other unions about potentially merging with the CWU. But what happens is, if an organisation thinks there's a need to merge, for want of a better phrase, they'll keep a number of options open. They'll have discussions with a number of partners, if you like, and then come to a decision about which they think is the best fit for them. So yeah, they were talking to us, talking to the National Federation of Retail News Agents, and discussing with the Post Office, as I understand it, a new arrangement, which led to the contract that you just referred to.
Now, it appears that it was the expectation of the CWU that the NFSP would not enter into that agreement. Do you know why that was their expectation at the time?
No, my sense for that, having been involved in discussions with other unions over the period of time, is you get a feel whether you're just there, for whatever better phrase, as a bargaining chip for them to go somewhere else. So they will say to whoever their preferred partner is, well, these are offering us a better deal. We're in discussions with this other group as well. So the deal better be really good for you, whoever you are, because we've got other options. once you go through the sort of negotiation process on that, which I've been involved in, but not with the Federation, you start to get a feel about whether they're serious about merging with you, or actually they're keeping their options open in case what they really want falls apart, and then they've got you as a backup.
Now, if we could move on, please, to page 3, and we see this issue addressed in some more detail. Thank you, under the heading Relationship Issues. Firstly, with Pol is the first issue dealt with. That reads, there was an exchange of correspondence with Pol in October 2014. This followed receipt by us of legal advice on the nature of Pol's relationship with the NFSP following the removal of the Federation from the list of accredited trade unions. Just pausing there, do you know why it was that the NFSP had been removed from the list of accredited trade unions?
I don't know the specific reason that would have been given by the CO. No.
If we go on, please, to the second paragraph, it reads, we need to return to that correspondence in the event of the merger process being terminated. So that's presumably a reference to the possible merger between the CWU and the NFSP. I'm assuming that's what that refers to. The exclusivity accorded to the NFSP does not appear to be consistent with particular legal obligations, especially as it necessarily means that CWU represented postmasters are excluded from arrangements which determine their contractual undertakings. Do you consider that the CWU was hampered in its ability effectively to represent the interests of sub-postmasters by reason of the fact that they were not formally recognised by the Post Office for collective bargaining purposes?
Yeah, I think so. In reaching out to anybody who wants to be a member of any union or the CWU is to say to them, this is what we can do on your behalf. So we can say to directly employed staff, what we can do on your behalf is go direct to the employer on pay terms, conditions that directly affect you. We are recognised by the employer to bargain on your behalf. I believe, my understanding is as of today, we still don't have a recognition agreement with the Post Office for our sub-postmasters section. And therefore, the offer that you make to potential members, one of the first questions they would ask is, what can you do on our behalf? We have to say to them, we're not recognised by the Post Office to directly represent your interests. So, in answer, not being recognised by the Post Office to directly represent their interests is a hindrance to recruitment of that cohort. In my view, sorry.
Well, it may be a hindrance to recruitment. Is it also a hindrance to effective representation?
Insofar as you cannot directly go to the Post Office, yes, it is.
Do you know the reasons which were given by the Post Office for refusing to recognise the CWU as representative?
I don't.
What, if any, steps has the union taken to address this?
I don't know. I think I've said in my statements since 2002, not my day job, Andy Fiori would be in the front line of making that representation to the Post Office.
Now, in the second half of this page, we can see the heading Relationship Issues with the NFSP as reconstituted under an MOU. It reads, we've received a copy of the much discussed proposed Memorandum of Understanding between Post Office Limited and the NFSP. This is attached. The most salient points of this document can be summarised as follows. We'll look at some of them now, please. The first one, summarising paragraph 2 of the draft MOU, the NFSP will reconstitute itself as a trade association or similar organisation. Are you able to explain, please, the distinction between a trade union and a trade association? What the significance of that would be?
Well, I understand what I know and believe a trade union to be on what its purpose is. And a trade association or similar organisation is there to protect the interests, as I understand it, of the business or the business owners, as opposed to all the workers who work in any particular trade or business, which is why I suspect the certification officer no longer includes the National Federation of Postmasters as an accredited trade union, because the trade union certification officer has a strict set of criteria about what a trade union is, and them not being listed as a trade union means that they fall outside of that remit. So there is a fundamental difference in protecting a business or protecting a trade than there is protecting directly employed workers.
The second bullet point, please, states that under the MOU, the Post Office, not Post Office Limited, will provide funding of up to 1.5 million per annum from 2015-2016. It goes on to explain that the actual amount would depend on the difference between the revenues derived from the current membership model and the income stream and what they actually received. But it goes on to state at the bottom, in discussions, CWU representatives have described adoption of the MOU as meaning an inevitable cessation of subscription income, and no one, perhaps should read from rather than form, the NFSP has disagreed. So essentially a proposal to provide funding of up to £1.5 million. If we could go over the page, please. The second bullet point there reads, PO will provide additional funding of no less than £1 million per annum as a budget for grants to the NFSP. Thus, the gross annual value of the MOU is up to £2.5 million per annum. Was a funding arrangement of this nature usual for a trade union or trade organisation, to your knowledge?
It's not usual for the trade union. Absolutely not. Trade unions are almost predominantly funded by subscription income paid by their members. This document shows that position for the Federation was to cease, and they were to be funded directly by a payment from the employer or the post office.
Now, the document goes on to suggest that there were likely to be some conditions attached to the grant of this funding. If we can scroll down, please. Thank you. So these are referenced as part of paragraph 6. The first bullet point identifies paragraph 6 as a review mechanism for the agreement, and states at para 6C it says that the NFSP is not engaged in activities which are actively detrimental to the post office, but does not define what these are. The paragraph goes on to state that the post office acknowledges that the NFSP must have freedom to undertake activities that protect and represent their members' views. But in undertaking these activities, the NFSP agree that it will not introduce commercial risk to the post office. The author observes this is a very wide potential prohibition, and while the post office remains publicly owned, the proposed TTIP treaty, do you know what that is a reference to? The TTIP treaty?
I think that was an international. I think there was an international agreement around how businesses transact, standards that they had to operate under, from memory.
That could be prayed in aid as the arbiter of commercial risk were the treaty to be ratified, it suggests. It goes on to say that there are dispute management procedures which are reasonably transparent and have a degree of independence. But in the final bullet point, please, paragraph 6, final subparagraph says, should the NFSP disclose post office information that is confidential or commercially sensitive, as defined in the confidentiality agreement, or encouragement, and presumably was intended to read encourage, sub-postmasters to take action which conflicts with their contractual obligations, except where all other avenues of dispute resolution have been exhausted, these will be deemed a material breach of this agreement. Essentially the NEC being notified there that there's a new arrangement for funding to be made, but that funding will come with certain conditions. Is that fair?
That's my understanding of.
Now, if we could turn to the following page, please, we can see the overall conclusion reached. Thank you, by the CWU. Forgive me if you just scroll up a little bit. Thank you. So as to the effect of these provisions, the report provided there can be no doubt that the MOU represents the abandonment by the Federation of any meaningful independence. Our relationship with them and the employer would necessarily change as a consequence, as the CWU would be the only organisation of standing able to offer postmasters effective representation. Now, reading that, it rather suggests that the CWU believed at that time that the NFSP had compromised or was going to compromise its independence in reaching this agreement. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And that the CWU believed that it was the only organisation which could offer effective representation to sub-postmasters.
That was our view, yes.
Now, it's a related issue, but I'd like to deal now, please, with how the CWU responded to the emerging scandal. If we could please bring up your witness statement at page 10. That's WITN 06370-200. Thank you. At page 10, please. Thank you. Paragraph 43. You say this. I did not take any steps between 2009 and 2019 inclusive in raising any concerns regarding the integrity of the Horizon IT system with Post Office Limited, the government, the shareholder executive, UKGI, MPs and peers or journalists, as this issue no longer formed part of my remit to do so. Now, just pausing there for a minute, you've just told us that as a member of the NEC, you received a report saying that the NFSP had compromised or was compromising its independence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you not think that you, as the Senior Deputy General Secretary, and other members of the NEC had a duty to take forward these issues on behalf of sub-postmasters who were not being effectively represented, in your view, by their trade association?
So the question was, did I take any steps? The answer is I didn't, because it was not my job to do so. CW structure at national level is we have a National Executive Council, which I sit on, which is responsible for finance, admin functions, things like whether or not we agree to merge with another union to form a union. Industrial issues, day-to-day industrial issues, which the post office and counter clerks are dealt with by a separate executive called the Postal Executive, of which Andy Fury is a national officer. I used to be a national officer of the Postal Executive from 1997 to 2002. And so those issues are dealt with not by the National Executive Council, but are dealt with by the Industrial Executive that I don't sit on and is not part of my responsibilities. So my statement was in response to the specific question that I was asked by the inquiry team. Did I take any steps between 2009 and 2019 in raising any concerns on that issue with those? And the answer is no, because as I've just explained, the remit for those was the then Assistant Secretary, current Assistant Secretary Andy Fury, and the Postal Executive.
Now, the role of Assistant Secretary was not as senior as a Deputy General Secretary, was it? In terms of hierarchy within... In
terms of the internal hierarchy of the union, correct.
Do you not think that this was an issue which required the involvement of more senior leadership?
No, because that isn't the structure. So the responsibilities of the national officials are laid out within the rule book. Mine is to assist the General Secretary, and the Postal Assistant Secretaries and the Postal Executive have sole authority over the industrial issues with the employers, Royal Mail, Post Office, etc.
Thank you, sir. I think the stenographer would like a short break, please. I have very few further questions for this witness, but I think there may be a couple of questions from the recognised legal representatives.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll take a break till 12:10.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Can you see and hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kearns, you've said in your statement and in your evidence that you simply weren't aware that sub-postmasters and post office employees were being prosecuted in reliance on data shown by Horizon. Is that right? At least for a substantial period of the time with which we're concerned.
Apart from when it became public, yes.
Yeah. Do you recall when you did first become aware?
I don't recall, no.
I wonder, please, if we could look again at that report to the NEC dated the 18th of June 2015. That's CWU 6076. This is the report we were looking at just shortly before the break, insofar as it related to the changes to the Constitution of the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters and its funding arrangement with the Post Office. It also contained an update on Horizon. We can see that, please, on the first page under the heading Horizon. It said this, as reported in LTB 26915. Is that a reference to letter to branch, LTB?
LTB, letter to branches.
Issued on the 21st of April. Concern about the approach adopted by Post Office Limited to the alleged problems caused to postmasters by the Horizon operating system has now been raised directly with the Prime Minister. There has been a pause in political activity on this during the general election period, but polls lack of engagement with the mediation process, the attempt to suppress a report by Second Sight, the company engaged to investigate alleged shortcomings of Horizon, and continuing concerns of both CWU and NFSP postmasters mean that the issue will not subside. Now, it goes on to read, please, over the page. The Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance organisation has been set up by mostly ex-postmasters who believe that they've been unfairly treated. However, the key individual in JFSA, Alan Bates, is not currently in contact with the CWU Postmasters branch. This suggests, at least that at this stage, Mr. Bates hadn't approached the CWU directly for support for his campaign. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what it says.
On the face of what we have before us. And the second paragraph goes on to read, Post Office Limited position has essentially been based on the principle that the Horizon system cannot go wrong. However, this is not what we, NFSP and JFSA, are saying. Our position is that however robust a computer system there can be, however robust a computer system there can be and have been problems. What this appears to be is an acknowledgement by the CWU that there have been problems with the Horizon system. Is that fair?
That's what that suggests, yes.
Now, the final paragraph reads, due to the collapse of the mediation scheme, at least 2 of our members will almost certainly now have normal Post Office disciplinary action taken against them because they are still serving, which will quickly culminate in Post Office Limited terminating the contract of one member and forcibly making the other pay back his losses by deduction to pay. Now, if we just step back for a minute, this is obviously in a report to you as a member of the NEC, that's correct, bringing to your attention concerns about Horizon. Is that fair?
Yes, it references...
Concerns which the CWU shared at that stage, or by that stage. These were concerns that affected both former sub-postmasters and current sub-postmasters, some of whom were members of the CWU at that time, isn't that right?
Yes, I mean, well, we had a Postmaster section, so yes.
Given what you were being told in a report such as this, should you have done more, do you think, to raise awareness within government and to lend your support to the campaign to expose the failings of Horizon?
As I said before the break, that was not my responsibility. Our rulebook, which is under which the CW operates, that responsibility is the responsibility of the Postal Executive and the officers of the Postal Executive, in this case Andy Fiori, to deal with.
Would it be fair, do you think, to say that, in essence, the CWU left the group litigants to bear the burden of challenging the integrity of Horizon?
Given that I had no involvement with that issue at that time, I couldn't say I could agree with that statement. I'm not in a position to agree with that statement because I don't know what the executive and the officer concerned were doing on a daily basis on this issue.
Thank you. So I have no further questions for this witness. Before the recognised legal representatives ask their questions, is there anything you wish to ask, sir?
No, thank you, no.
Forgive me, sir, if we just pause for 1 minute.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir, we've had a late request for a further document to be put to the witness. It may be that the way we can approach it is to let Mr. Stein, if you have questions, to go first. I think the other representative is Ms. Watt.
Yeah.
We can review the position in relation to that document to ensure that the witness is given a fair opportunity to review it before he's asked any questions.
Sorry, we're going to hear from Mr. Steen and then Ms. Watt, and then review whether we need to ask any more questions. Is that it?
So, yes, I mean, my proposal is that we proceed with questions now whilst we review in the background what the effect of this document is, and then we will perhaps see where we are in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
So no objection, of course, to that, to us proceeding that way. The difficulty, though, is that if the document is released and I need to see it and consider it for the purposes of any further questions, then I may beg an indulgence, which is to return to any questions that we may have arising out of that document. But on that basis, sir, would you mind if I then go ahead with our questions for Mr. Kearns?
No, carry on.
I'm very grateful. Mr. Kearns, you're a long-standing employee of the CWU, the Communication Workers Union. You're employed in an elected position as the Senior Deputy General Secretary of the CWU. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You may or may not know, my name is Sam Steen. I represent a large number of sub-postmasters, mistresses, and employees working in branch offices of the Post Office. I've just got a couple of questions, using first of all your experience, if I may, as part of the trade union movement. In the judgment number 3 in the High Court, I'm not sure you have this, but I'll read out the relevant part. Judgment by Mr. Justice Fraser, now Lord Justice Fraser. He said this at paragraph 1120 of judgment number 3, that the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters is not independent of the Post Office. He went on to say, the Post Office also has a highly detailed funding agreement with the NFSP that would entitle the Post Office to claw back funds already paid to the NFSP if it does anything that would damage the Post Office's reputation, including supporting the sub-postmasters in this litigation. So he's making the points, which is the NFSP is not independent of the Post Office. There's a funding agreement with the NFSP allowing the Post Office to claw back funds paid to the NFSP if the NFSP did anything that would damage the Post Office's reputation. Now, help us understand, with your with your own work within the trade union movement, is that a normal arrangement with a representative body working on behalf of, in this case, Sub-Postmaster?
No, I wasn't aware of that specific, but having listened to what you said, I've never come across a representative body, trade union, that has such clauses in it. That doesn't sit comfortably with me as a trade unionist, that you could enter into that and claim to be a representative body.
And it may be in some ways obvious, but what's the problem with entering into an agreement to not criticise the employer of the people you represent? What's the difficulty?
Well, you take away your independence, you take away your ability to challenge the direction that the employer or the company is going in, because you think it's detrimental to both the members you represent. In the case of ourselves as the CWU, recent examples of Royal Mail, the service they're providing to the customer, to the public. If you're unable to challenge that, strikes me that it's more like a business partnership than it is a representative body for the individuals that make up the organisation.
Can I then ally that to a question that was asked by Ms Hodge that concerned and touched on collective bargaining? Now, you referred to collective bargaining at paragraph 7 of your statement, where you say that you must add that the CWU has long called for union recognition for collective bargaining purposes for sub-postmasters, but Pol has consistently refused to grant this. You've added in your evidence that you believe that's still the position today. Is that correct?
That's my understanding of it.
Now, paragraph 11 says this: we engage in collective bargaining processes with several employers on issues such as pay, terms and conditions of employment. So Ms Hodge was seeking to establish with you what, if you like, are the advantages of collective bargaining on behalf of members of the CWU. You refer to it there as being discussions with employers on issues such as pay, terms and conditions of employment. What would be the effect of having what I'm going to call a shackle on a representative body to not criticise the employer in relation to collective bargaining?
My view is that the shackle would be that you're not able to effectively represent the members of that organisation, because, well, if you're restricted, for want of a better phrasing, criticism. So it's, I'll give an example. We had a major industrial dispute with Royal Mail some years ago. I understand that not everybody likes this, but we took major industrial action, which disrupted the service, partly because we didn't think our members were being treated with due respect, partly because the reason for that was because the direction that Royal Mail was setting out as a business, and therefore the industrial action that we eventually took was, if you like, for want of a better phrase, a protest against that, to defend our members against job losses, so on and so forth. If you're restricted from being able to make that criticism, then, well, you're not able to effectively represent those individuals who make up that organisation, is how I would see it.
Now, you mentioned to Ms Hodge the position of Mr Fury. Mr Fury, if I've got it right, is the secretary to the CWU, but also is the CWU's national officer for postmasters, CWU members who are working in post office branches and working in the wider post office. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So that's Ms Fury's title is essentially to deal with all such matters in relation to CWU membership, sub-postmasters, people employed in branches and working within the post office itself. Is that right? Correct.
His title is the Assistant Secretary, Clerical, Cash Handling. So all those issues, which includes Crown Post Office staff and administrative staff.
Which is why in your evidence you've made it clear that since I think it's around 2002, that's not been your direct area of responsibility, it's been Mr Fury's. Is that correct?
March 2002, to be specific.
I'm grateful. And then turning to Mr Fury, are you aware that he's given evidence before select committees in relation to the CWU sub-postmaster branch employee membership?
I am.
Given evidence at least on 2 occasions that I can find on a quick search, is that right? and been interviewed generally as regards the post office and actions in relation taken by the management of the post office, and is quoted often in the press.
Yes.
And fairly obviously, Mr. Fury would be someone that could be able to take any other matters further if there was any other questions to be asked by the inquiry.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Kearns.
Ms. Ward?
Good afternoon. Can you hear and see me? Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Kearns. I'm just diagonally behind Mr. Steen there. Yes, we have this problem every time I speak. Thank you. I have some questions for you on behalf of the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters, and I think we actually spoke before when you were here the last time. Your union would have had hundreds, perhaps if not thousands, of members working in what was then hundreds of Crown Office branches using Horizon during the 2000s when the scandal was emerging. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, my recollection, for around 2000, I think we have maybe 9,500 members. That's severely diminished through the 2000s and to today.
So a lot of members, many members.
Yeah, thousands.
Working in these Crown Office, Post Office.
Correct.
Yeah. So you've accepted earlier this morning that there would have been prosecutions of Crown Office employees. You said the CWU didn't know anything about these prosecutions because you didn't provide legal funding for criminal representation. And you've said, as I understand it, you don't think you could, would or should have known about these prosecutions at the time. Is that correct?
Yeah, they were not raised with us at national level. We were not aware of them. I mean, in terms of me saying I was aware of them because I was handed a piece of paper that details prosecutions. That's how I'm aware of them. I think also in some of the questioning I was given in preparing my statement was a question about what legal services the union offers to its members, and we don't offer legal services for criminal prosecutions.
But as a generality, and this is over time, and I think Sir Alan Bates' first raising of the point is around 2003, 2004, and then everything gathers momentum over the years. There were these increasing voices about problems with Horizon and prosecutions, and this was being reported in the media. So my question is, how or why could the CWU, even if you yourself in your role, not understand that issues with Horizon and prosecutions, given they were being talked about in the context of sub-postmasters, might well be involving your members, could also be affecting them?
As I say, from March 2002, so the period you refer to, 2003, 2004, from March 2002, if such incidents occurred, they would go to Andy Fury and his department to deal with.
I mean, I understand it wasn't you personally. I'm talking about the union as a whole, looking at its members and issues that were coming into the public domain, were in the public domain. How is it that the union itself couldn't understand that those issues might be affecting their own members, even if they weren't hearing about actual criminal prosecutions of their own members?
I mean, I think the point I've made and tried to make is that the union is made up of a number of sections, and those elected to the top of the union have completely different responsibilities. So the responsibilities for dealing with any issues that would arise for our members directly employed by Crown officers would go to and rest with what I would call a postal executive, which is under our rule book, which has the sole responsibility for dealing with those issues. So it's not that the union in total would be aware of all of those issues, because it's not why everyone employed by the union is not employed to deal with everything that the union faces. So individuals and elected groups are responsible for specific different aspects of the work we undertake. So we have a nationally elected executive that deals with all issues relating to our members employed within the postal industry, which includes the post office, and we have a lead assistant secretary who deal with various businesses. In this case, my responsibility up until March 2002, and then Andy Fiore's responsibility.
So would it be fair to say that the CWU, whether it was you or whether it was Andy Fury, but the CWU is joining the list of a rather long line of people and organisations who were simply incurious about Horizon?
No, I don't think that's fair to say.
Well, you've said that you didn't know anything about it and that despite media coverage, no one was prompted to look at the issue for CWU members. So I'm suggesting to you that that is indeed being incurious.
No, I don't think I said I didn't know anything about it. I also, on a number of occasions, I've been quite specific about where the responsibility lies in a large trade union like ours to deal with these issues on a day-to-day basis.
Just
Well, let me just ask you, Mr. Kearns, clearly I understand what you're telling me about the demarcation of responsibility, but would you expect that the relevant heads of the section which deals with post office employees and sub-postmasters would have had information about the numbers of people who are either being prosecuted or dismissed on the strength of information from Horizon?
If that information somehow was given to them, either by the post office or by our reps or members.
Well, when you say somehow, were there any processes in place, so far as you know, perhaps you don't know, which would allow information, such as I've just suggested to you, to go up the ladder from the local reps, where no doubt it would have started, to the senior people at the head of the relevant section?
If those were issues of concern to our representatives at local level, at area level, regional level, they would be passed up through briefings and meetings that our executive and national officers would have with those representatives on a regular basis. So if those were issues of concern, then yes, that would be the process.
Yeah.
Through the policy procedure.
Not wishing to put words in your mouth, is this a fair summary that you would expect that if local representatives were concerned about issues such as prosecutions or dismissal on the strength of Horizon, they would have ensured that it went up the ladder to more senior people?
That's a fair summary, yes.
Fine. All right. Sorry, Ms. Watt.
Thank you, sir. Just picking up and following on from that and earlier questions, you were referring in some evidence with Ms. Hodge to the former NFSP members, such as Mark Baker, coming over to the CWU because they were dissatisfied with the NFSP. I think it's fair to say it's a matter of public record on their part, certainly at least Mark Baker's part, that this was largely to do with the dissatisfaction about the way in which the issues on Horizon were being dealt with by the NFSP. Now, even if it was the case, for instance, that the post office wouldn't talk to the CWU about sub-postmasters at the time, this is around 2011, because they only wanted to deal with the NFSP on sub-postmasters, surely any concerns being brought to the CWU by Mark Baker and others about Horizon would have been another way that your union was alerted to problems with Horizon that could be affecting your own Crown Office members, and you could have raised it with the Post Office then. Would you accept that?
That would be as I said earlier, that would be, if Mark Baker has represented those to Andy Fiore, who was dealing with those issues in 2011, that would have been a way of raising them with the Post Office, yes. But
it just never bubbled up to the relevant surface of the CWU, is that
Sorry,
where
it didn't bubble up?
Yeah, it didn't go through those layers that you described to the chair there of how matters come up through to the top of the CWU and perhaps then go to the Post Office.
Well, again, I know people might, if I don't me repeating this, but after 2002, that wasn't my responsibility, so I'm not aware of which issues bubbled up, as you describe it, through that rep structure to Andy Fiore and what then transpired after that. Because
Did the postal executive of the CWU ever bring issues about horizon concerns and Crown Office employees to the Executive Council of the CWU that you can recall?
Not that I can recall.
You were just got a couple of more questions. I think you were just discussing there towards the end of your evidence about self-employed sub-postmasters and collective bargaining. I think you've been discussing and you'd agree that self-employed sub-postmasters running small businesses are quite a different beast to large-scale groups of employees such as postal workers on collective bargaining. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they are different groups.
One final question. When I asked you questions on the last time you appeared, you agreed it was likely that post office employees such as auditors and others were or could have been members of the CWU. I think you'd agree that would likely also include investigators as well. Would that be right?
When you say investigators, you mean
those who carried out an investigation function, people who were formerly counter clerks and then investigated shortfalls and discrepancies in
the audit team, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, a number of those were
members.
Certain members of the audit team were members of the CWU. Managers of the audit team were not
CMA.
members of the CWU.
We
Communication Managers Association.
Yes, we heard that. We've also heard much evidence about the aggressive bullying and intimidating tactics used by investigators and auditors, and I just wanted to ask what you have to say about that behaviour and what the inquiry's heard about the way in which auditors and investigators operated.
So I only saw a snippet of one of the post office investigation branches giving evidence. I've had experience of the post office investigation branch as it was then in my day job when I was a local rep, having represented people who've been accused of theft. I do find their methods to be aggressive. I do find their methods to be almost, natural justice is innocence until proven guilty. My experience of sitting down alongside our members facing the Post Office Investigation Branch, there's a strong belief in the Post Office Investigation Branch where people are guilty and they're there to ensure that there are consequences to that. I don't find it generally that my experience in the past, it's a long time since I've had any dealings with Post Office Investigation Branch, is I find them to be aggressive, not always. I wouldn't trust them.
So, to the extent that any of those were your members, is this something that you could or should or would now provide training to your members in how to conduct themselves?
Train to our members?
Well, the ones who were members who are conducting those kind of functions.
Our reps. Yeah, we provide, as I said earlier, we provide training for our reps.
Sorry, not your reps, the members who are actually conducting themselves in this way. Do you consider the CWU as an obligation to perhaps remind its members of how to conduct themselves when carrying out their functions?
Sorry, members of the investigation branch who are not members of the CWU. Mm-hmm. Members of the audit team.
Audit team, yes.
Well, the audit. I'm talking about two different things. So about the investigation branch, who sit down and accuse people of theft or wrongdoing. The audit team. So the audit team predominantly in Crown offices, individual stocks, and the office balance is conducted on a Wednesday evening. Predominantly, audit teams would arrive before the opening of business on a Thursday morning. Mm-hmm. And do a full audit, so they would audit all the individual stocks and the whole office balance to check that the closing balance that the office and the individuals declared on a Wednesday night was in fact accurate. Those staff who carried that out were CWU members, but they were not the ones who would be interviewing individual members of staff and accusing them of, for example, theft. Excuse me. That was the Post Office Investigation Branch. two separate bodies within the post office.
But those individuals might have been the ones out in the field dealing with sub-postmasters. That's what the evidence has heard. Would you accept that?
The audit team?
Yeah, members of the audit team.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions. Thanks.
Right, Ms Hodge, where are we with this document?
So I don't think there's any need to show it in the end. I think the questions were posed in a more general way.
Fine.
So that concludes the questions from the recognised legal representatives.
Right.
And the
Thank
witness
you,
may be
Mr.
released.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kearns, for reappearing at the inquiry and answering further questions. I'm grateful to you. So, is it sensible to break for lunch now?
So I think so, yes.
So we'll resume at 20 to 2?
Yes, thank you.
All right, fine.